Well, Roxanne, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be with you, Keith, and thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I am too. I think it will be rich and fun, and I hope really helpful for your listeners and viewers.
All my guests provide great content, so I'm looking forward to you adding to the long list of amazing guests who have been on. So, no pressure. So, I love to ask my guests this question: what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Four pieces actually. I have, if I could,
Sure.
and actually, as I'm thinking about these, they really have been guides in my life. One was from my husband. This was about 25, 26 years ago, 27 years ago. And I was, I had stepped down from teaching at the university and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was kind of finding my way. And uh, he said, follow the energy. And what that referred to, Keith, is that I had taught for a long time. I know how to work with people. So I went into uh, team development, supporting teams and being healthier, et cetera, et cetera. And I enjoyed it, but it wasn't the energy for me. And he said, well, what's coming to you? And I said, well, people are contacting me, asking if I would work with them individually, which led me into becoming a coach 25 years ago now. So follow the energy. And I often use that in our organization. I pay attention to what's happening, what are people responding to that resonates, with me or with us. One of my beloved teachers and mentors, Don Richard Riso, who I might talk about a bit later. He was a pioneer in the Enneagram world. He's passed. But on a private conversation we had, he said, pay attention to the details. And it took me actually quite a while to really get that. And what I came to understand that to mean is that when you pay attention to the details, you are more present to what's happening. You're more present to your life. You're more present to what's around you. Um, even something as simple that we do every day, hopefully, as we're washing our hands, right? Well, what does that feel like? What's the experience of that? So maybe sudsing up and kind of clasping your hands and then drying. We do it so automatically. It's like, oh, no, that's a detail in our life. And paying attention to the details actually helps us become more present and deepens our experience of life. And then my dear dad, he was a Depression era guy. And so he knew a lot about difficulties. And when something difficult would happen in our family, it would be hard for us. He said, this too will pass. Or when I had something in my life going on and he said, this too will pass. And, it always does. um, and what I really have taken that to mean over time is that this too will pass. It relates to the dynamism of life. Things do change, and not to hold on to anything too hard. Don't hold on too much because it too will pass. So it's and even the good things. Don't hold on to what you think are the bad things. Trying to get rid of them, or hold on to the good things, because this is an experience and we're moving through life. And obviously, life is in the midst of a lot of change all the time, and we're really experiencing it now. So, not grasping, not getting too attached, I think was a big part of that message for me. And then another one is a woman that was a friend of mine, was also a mentor at times. Her name was Joya. Isn't that a great name?
It's a great
Joya.
name.
I
Love that.
love it, Joya. And she said, and this was in the 90s, she said, Roxanne, Prepare, prepare yourself. We have to be prepared. And she was actually talking about, kind of change is coming. We're in the midst of a time of a lot of dynamism, and that was in the 90s. And what that really mean to me, Keith, was to be prepared means to do my inner work.
Mm.
To do my inner work so that I can be as present, and help other people in their inner work to move through whatever might be coming. And so, those 4 messages, they're pretty woven in to my life. It's amazing because I doubt that, well, maybe Don, because he was that kind of a teacher, but I'm not sure that any of those messages were, when they were said to me, was like, the intention was, oh, you're going to carry this throughout your life. So we
Right.
never
Yeah.
know. We never know what the impact of what we say, to others, what we convey might be. It might just be a seed for something that lives on through their lives.
I love that. And one of those that you mentioned was one I used when I was in school. This too shall pass, because there were some difficult moments and, difficult finals, difficult classes. And we thought we invented that phrase. So now you have it too. We obviously didn't invent that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what happens is when we're in the midst of it, it's like a particularly difficult situations. They blow up, right? They kind of bloom out and they take over everything. And it feels like, oh my gosh, this is just the way it's going to be. And, and so we kind of get, in a way, attached, even fighting it, um, rather than saying, oh, this is a point in time. It might be a long point, lots of points,
right.
but it will pass.
I love that. I'm curious, looking at your very nice resume here and life experiences, who are some people in your life who along your journey served as a mentor for you?
I've had, I feel like many, mentors that have really had an impact. One was in high school, and he was the high school counselor. His name was Glenn Fear. What a name. And I did not fear him. And he recognized something in me that I didn't know that anybody else recognized. And he really supported me during my high school years when there were challenging times. And he also recognized that I had potential, that there was potential within that just needed to be explored. And so he's put things into place to help support that after I graduated. Um, Sherry Huber was a mentor for me. She's actually a Zen teacher. But what I really recall from her is that she she helped me at least start the process that I think is a lifelong, is to be more honest with myself about how I show up, or who I thought I was. I, I think of it as like she was trying to help me get over myself. And I'm still working on that, Keith. It's a long process. um,
Definitely.
um, I mentioned Joya already, but I just want to mention Don again. Don Richard Riso, and his teaching partner, Russ Hudson, who's still very much alive and very much involved in leader in the Enneagram world. But Don really supported me in understanding the power of the Enneagram and in my own life, and then how that he supported me when I was writing my first book in the Enneagram world, which was the integration of Enneagram and coaching, deep coaching. So he was there. I kind of felt him behind me, but we had a number of conversations, and he really mentored me through that. And it was such an honor for me to have that relationship with him. And in a way, I really kind of call upon him. He was so wise and so generous with me and with so many people. He impacted thousands of people, actually. So I was very blessed to have him on just lots of one-on-one occasions.
So you've mentioned the Enneagram. I know what it is, but for those who don't know, kind of explain kind of the concept of Enneagram personality
Y-
assessment.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of glad you stage your question that way because the Enneagram, as I have come to understand it and work with it, it's really a body of wisdom that leads to transformation. So the way most people know the Enneagram is that it helps you identify what type you are, and so it's
Right.
often understood as a typing assessment. And, and there are 9 different points around this circle, a circle of oneness that reflects that we're all connected in a very deep and profound way, but there are individual expressions of this oneness. Okay. And those 9 types, or I like to think of them as a kind of spheres of the human condition. Um, they show us where we get in our way. It shows us who we think we are in terms of the personality, and most of us just naturally think that we are a personality that we identify with. Oh yeah, I can kind of find out, excuse me, where I land on this map, this visual map of the Enneagram, on this circle with these 9 points. Then can start looking at, these are some of the behaviors I show up with, or these are some of the attitudes I have, or these are some of the emotional patterns that I have. So it shows us the patterns that come with a personality. And there's 9 different sets of patterns. Below that, or with that, um, is what's beyond the personality. And that there are more expansive experiences that are related to that point on the Enneagram. So, for example, let's just take on one point in the Riso Hudson work. Let me just so point one, okay, and point one refers to an experience of really, having a mission, wanting to do good in the world, seeing yourself as out there, paying attention to what needs to happen. And we can also get very critical about ourselves, not doing enough, not doing the best job, or thinking that we need to be doing better all the time. And so the inner critic gets really involved with that. Uh, when the personality patterns can relax a little more, if that makes sense, when we're not so attached to them, we're not holding on to them so
Sure.
much, that the personality patterns can begin to start taking a back seat, and our truer nature begins to come through. And our truer nature at that point one is more serenity, the wisdom. I still can really have high intentions of helping to make something in the world better. And I can also accept what is more easily. I mean, this is kind of a 12-step practice, is through, the type one. So uh, there's a way in which we can work with the Enneagram to identify where we land, and also to do some inner work around it. And that inner work, we're pointing to, I have something in my work. I use an iceberg model, and the iceberg model shows what is more visible, our behaviors and what we're doing in the world. But below the water are those inner dynamics that are driving our patterns. And that's where we actually can do the work, is underneath the waterline. And as we pay attention to, what might be driving us, we can begin to work with it. There's a healing process. Let me give you another example. Point 3, which is called the achiever. Boy, I'm going to I'm going to be the best at this, and I'm going to be successful in what I do. And, um, and, and people who are dominant in that type often are very successful in the world, right? And they're also often exhausted um, because they're on constantly oriented toward their goals. I have a goal, going to meet that goal. Then there's the next goal, going to meet that goal. But underneath that is like, oh, I haven't connected with my heart. And so starting to connect more with my heart. And at the point 3, um, people that identify with that point tend to be incredible teachers of the heart, and really help or just connect with that in their life to help other people connect with their hearts. But you don't see that on the surface. So we're looking at what's on the surface and then the qualities that are available when what's on the surface and the personality activity relaxes and goes to the back seat. Because we'll always have a personality. We're not trying to get rid of the personality. It's just seeing more of who we are.
So I know I've done a ton of personality things. And like Myers Briggs, for example, you have a
Yeah.
different personality type when you're under stress and a different environment. So, how is the Enneagram? You kind of explained how is that different from other assessments to try to kind of get at who are you in certain situations or certain circumstances or under stress, or just kind of maybe kind of unpack a little bit of how that is unique, the Enneagram.
Yeah. I work with a lot of different assessments as well. And what the Enneagram actually asks different questions. So we enter into it from a place of identifying or recognizing some patterns, and we go, oh yeah, I do that. Oh yeah, I do that. But the work related to it is really to take us underneath those patterns. And that's different. I work with Myers-Briggs, I work with DISC, and others. But this is to explore, so, our inner motivations, to begin to see, experience those places in our life where, oh, we're not so taken by the personality, and we recognize, we might have moments of awe, and I think, that's just one of those experiences like, oh, there's a lot more here than just me trying to be in control of life. And so the personality types at the personality level show us how we try to manipulate life to be in control. And you and I know, that only goes so far. There's certain things that we can control in our lives, and there's an awful lot, that we can't. And so there's a greater focus from the transformational perspective of how can I work with this to get over myself, not get in my way so much. That's what I hear from a lot of people, students and clients. I feel like I get in my own way, and I don't understand why that is. And then we see how that personality actually works. And I can take people through a process about how it actually works and how it keeps repeating itself, trying to always get to a point of satisfaction that never satisfies for long. So, for example, I'll just go back to the point 3, the achiever. If I'm trying to always be successful and trying to reach a goal, oh, that goal, achieving that might feel great, maybe for 5 minutes, for a day, maybe longer, but guess what? It's never enough. So then starts it all over again. It starts it all over. So the patterns really do run in cycles. And I find there's so much more depth. I mean, for me, the Enneagram is really can be a lifelong area of study because it helps us connect to both how we can be more present, be here in our bodies. So a lot of somatic work with our hearts, with our emotions, with the deeper connected heart that's connected to the divine, um, and to our mental activity, what's going on in our mind. So it teaches us how we can work with those three centers, what we call the belly, heart, and mind centers, to um, to see where they're actually not working to support our our life, and what we can do to bring more attention to each of the centers. So the mind, when we can connect with the spaces between all those thoughts. Yeah, mindfulness is another way of thinking about it. How to be
Mm,
really
sure.
mindful. So it it has so much that I think for people who are really analytical, they're attracted because, oh, I can start to understand what this is about. But what about my heart? What about being here in my body? Do I have a body? A lot of us know we have a body because we take showers, right? We have to
Right.
put on clothes, but we might not realize that we have internal resources in this. And that's one of the beautiful gifts of the Enneagram. It's to really help us know that we're not our personality, Keith. It helps
Yeah.
us to know that there's so much more. And if we get caught in our personality, we're guaranteed to have lots of unnecessary problems. I mean, there's enough issues in the world, but the personality can really get us in trouble.
Most definitely. So let's talk about your new book. And what inspired you to write underneath your personality?
Well, what inspired me was that the book that it is based upon, which is Deep Living with the Enneagram, Recovering Your True Nature, is a bigger volume. It's a volume to come back to over and over and over because there's a lot of material in it that really helps people orient to how do I go through this transformational process. So it's like there is for people who may not be quite ready to jump in to that. This book, let's see if I can do underneath your person. Oh, I've got notes. Underneath your personality and discover greater well-being through deep living with the Enneagram is kind of an entryway um, to the bigger book. So it kind of gives a sense of what's involved at a certain level, and then deep living with the Enneagram is really takes you into that depth. And another reason I wrote it is be very transparent. I had he's now passed a foreign um, rights agent, and he said, "Oh, I think in the foreign literature world that a shorter book might be a great entryway." So he really encouraged me to write that. So this kind of distills and gives, in a way, a bit of a synthesis of what's involved to really orient ourselves to deep living, because it's not just about knowing and landing on where we are on the Enneagram map, but it's how do we approach it? How do we work with this? And for sure, what comes up all the time. You maybe have never experienced it, but I think probably most people have. The inner critic.
Oh no, he lives in me too.
Yeah, yeah. No, everyone has some experience of the inner critic. And so how do you work with that? And in fact, in the Deep Living book, I have a whole huge chapter on how to work with it in a way that we're not trying to make it go away, but how we change our relationship to it. Um, so yeah, so the underneath your personality, has some examples and also includes what's called a triangle of identity. And this is something that actually is below the waterline. So the triangle of identity has in the middle of this, well, if we start on one corner, let's say we start over here and we say, um, that's what I want in life. So I identify with the point 9, which is at the top of the Enneagram symbol, point 9. And what people dominant in type 9 want is comfort,
Mm,
and not to make waves. They want to be connected, but they want to avoid is conflict. So do whatever they can to avoid conflict. And then at the top up here is, well, how do I cope within life if I'm trying to get to comfort and harmony in life? I want to live in harmony with others. And if I want to avoid conflict, how do I cope with all the things that come up in life? Right. And I shut down, is one way of doing it. I numb out. That's one way. That's a coping strategy. And then in the middle of that triangle is then who I think I am. Oh, I think I'm calm. I'm low maintenance. I'm nice, and that becomes a basis for how we think of ourselves. And actually, part of the work is how do we deal with what we want to avoid,
right.
right? Because by trying to avoid conflict, we create conflict, and it's so paradoxical. So I think that that's a really helpful part for each of the descriptions of the nine points.
So I'm curious, how do you incorporate this into your coaching practice?
Oh, well, actually, it was being a coach that led me to the Enneagram, and I had a coach, and I was talking to. I said, I'm not getting to the real stuff when I'm coaching. I'm just not getting to the real stuff, and it feels too superficial. He said, check out the Riso Hudson Enneagram. And so this is like 2000. I looked at the book and I had learned about the Enneagram, I thought, or I'd been introduced to it before. I didn't like it. I thought it was I didn't like it at all. So it was the way it was written. It was the way it was presented at that time. I thought it was quite negative. And I wasn't ready. I'm sure I wasn't ready, to get into it. But as I picked up and then started studying with Don and Russ, it was like, oh, this is it. This is what I'm not getting to. So I started incorporating that into my coaching, which was to meet the client where they are without trying to fix them. And I think that a
Sure.
lot of times clients come in, I'm sure you see this, like people feel like there's something terribly wrong with them and that needs to be fixed. And so I was able to help people connect with where they landed on the map, like what they most identified with. And then we would explore, so, what's your belief? What are your beliefs about yourself? What's the fundamental belief, which is really hard to get to, a really fundamental belief that we have probably lived our whole life with. And then, what's working, what's not working, how to engage these centers of intelligence. So it's, um, it took me 5 years to write the deep coaching book, which integrated the Enneagram in coaching. And its second edition came out, I think that was in 22, deep coaching, using the Enneagram as a catalyst for profound change. The first version took me 5 years, and then the second version took me another 3 years because it's like 40% new material. There's just so much that we can, so much support that we can give our clients by helping them to become more present to themselves, pay attention to this inner critic that gets in there and tells them terrible things that they begin to believe. And so how to gain some distance, how to change your relationship to the inner critic, how to identify, to connect with. And we're talking about having a direct experience. So it's not just I always say to my clients, don't believe me. Check in with your direct experience. What is true for you? Well, what language might you use that I'm not using that reflects what your experience is? So it's very much connected with this is what I experience as being true. And so often, Keith, what is a person has been holding inside for a long time about something that is true for them, both that could be really hard to admit and to recognize that's part of the human experience, that's part of the human condition, that's been part of your journey, and you're in a new place now, you're moving, but and oftentimes this truth is, oh my gosh, it's so brilliant about what they recognize is possible for themselves. And that's what I think I really help people do is recognize what's possible, their potential, um, that maybe hasn't been fully expressed yet. And that's a joy too when people come into contact with that. And when they're able to say, you know what, Roxanne, my inner critic came up and I took a breath and I said, that's not helping. Don't need you now. And what is more true for me right now? And so to just interrupt the inner critic and how powerful that is. Because when we're trying to grow, I mean, when we're in a growth path, the inner critic's going to come up and say, no, 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 you got to stay the way you were.
Right, exactly. So, for those who are going to pick up your book underneath your personality, how would you recommend they utilize the book to get the most out of it?
Well, I recommend that as you read, you sit with it. It's not like a speed read. Our inner and being introduced to our inner work or this form of the inner work. Maybe a person's done quite a bit of inner work. I had done a lot of inner work, I thought, before I came to the Enneagram. This was a whole different approach. And and see what resonates. See what resonates. Take time. There's examples. Do I resonate with it? No, that doesn't sound like me. Probably doesn't. You might um, land on a different point on the Enneagram map. Um, and um, notice in your life how do certain patterns show up that are indicate that are listed in the book for each type. How does that show up? Does that feel true for you? Like, are these descriptors that make sense? And sometimes it takes a while. A lot of times, in fact, a lot of times for people, it takes a while to self-identify. And I think it's very useful to have a coach to take a person through an inquiry process to see what feels most true. I mistyped myself initially. I mistyped myself um, as a two, which is the helper, because I do a lot of helping and I always have since I was a kid. And so I was a helper and I'm generous and I'm warm and I really care for people. And then, but it didn't make that much difference in my life. So what? It's like I wasn't, it didn't have an energetic response. It's just like I recognized some of those things. And then I found type 9, which is the peacemaker. And I went, oh, it's right here. And I've never seen it. How I think of myself, my patterns, they're right here. And I just have never recognized them. And it shook me to the core, really. So it takes, and then it's like, oh, thank goodness I'm seeing something truer about myself. So, take what I would say is if you're looking at the 9 types and you think you might be dominant in one of them, just stay curious about it and stay open because that may or may not be the type that is right for you. For the 2, it's like I didn't have the same internal motivations that a person who is dominant as a helper had, but boy, the motivations, to stay in kind of invisible and a lot of the characteristics of 9, like those were my inner secret. I just thought that that's who I was. I'll give you another example. I was asked to come in to work with a team um, uh, by the executive director because she wasn't really happy with how the team was performing, and she thought maybe working with the Enneagram would be helpful. So, I was introducing the different um, points and types, and we get to type three. I picking on three today, um, and and we were talking about being really goal oriented and always trying to achieve and be recognized for your accomplishments. And she goes, "Well, everybody does that." And, and her team is going, "Uh-uh." That's not how everybody is. And so and this is what we do. We take what is natural for us and we think, oh, that's who I am. And that's how then everybody should be. And so she had a should around the rest of her team that they should be like her. We do that with our kids. They should be like me, but they might have a totally different orientation to life. So we can still really be a big contributor and have a lot to offer and not to a team, for example, and not be dominant in this three. So it takes a lot of honesty and willingness to be curious. It takes compassion. So being compassionate, if you're reading this, or the bigger book, Deep Living with the Enneagram, um, be really compassionate um, and there's a trust part of this too. To trust that there's something more maybe to learn about yourself, to experience. Some of it might be a little harder. Some of it will be like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? That's part of this experience of this type. So I always suggest that people enter it with curiosity, compassion, um, try to be honest with yourself to the degree that you can, and um, courageous because it's we've lived the way we live for so long and take it for granted. This is just who I am. That's what I hear from a lot of people. Well, it's just who I am. Hmm. Well, let's take a look at that, Keith. Is that just who I am? Maybe not. Maybe there's really something more. And that's a pain point. That this is just who I am, and nothing. I don't. So what's to change? Or I can't change, and so we feel like this is the way we have to be for the rest of our life. So um, it's helping to be willing to have maybe meet the pain point and also recognize that that's not really the truth. That there's so much more to you.
Wow, that's insightful. So I love to ask my guests this question. As you think about the work you're already doing and the books that you have coming up, what do you want your legacy to be?
That's a big question. That's a big question. It is. I've always called this work a force for love. I feel like this is really about loving. In fact, I call the Enneagram a map of love because it brings us into a possibility and the probability, if we do the inner work around it, of coming into greater love of self, not in a narcissistic way, but just really honoring. Here we are. We're on this earth. There's some reason, whatever that divine sacred reason is for us, and so compassion. So I hope that my legacy has something to do with bringing helping people to be more compassionate, more caring, more kind to themselves and to others, and to recognize that love's here. Love's here. And if we open to it, oh my gosh, we don't have to go around trying to create love. We don't have to try to be love. We can receive what's here. And so this is a real compassionate, I think, tender, gentle way of entering into our transformational work. Um, and I, Keith, I feel so blessed to have come into this work for myself because it's totally changed. It turned my life around. I say that it saved my life, and I don't know if that's literal. I think it is. I don't think it's literal, but it feels like it. It's certainly at an emotional, a spiritual level. It's saved my life to come into the greater, a deeper truth.
That's amazing. So, where can listeners find this amazing book, Underneath Your Personality, and connect with you on social media?
Well, I'll tell you what, they could actually go to my website just to get a taste. If they want to get a taste, they go to deepwithin.co. That's my author website, and can get sign up and then get a download of about the first. And this is only like 100, I don't know, 50 pages. This book, they get a download of the first part of the book, 25 pages or so. Of course, it's online, and they can request it through a bookstore. They won't find it probably in a bookstore, but certainly on Amazon. Also, and that's true for my other books as well. If they're interested in getting a little more insight, they can sign up at www.deeplivinglab.org. That's a nonprofit that I co-founded, and that it offers work, coaching, and courses based mostly on my books. And signing up there will get you information on what's offered, but also you'll get a download on these iceberg models that I was talking about, like what's above the waterline, what's underneath the waterline. So there's two resources just to get free information. And that's a really great way to connect with me. And just to go with Roxanne Howe-Murphy on Facebook or on LinkedIn. Those are the two sources of social media that I tend to use the most.
Well, Roxanne, thanks so much for sharing your heart and your passion for the Enneagram and the work you do, and living that deeper living. I appreciate the work you do, and blessings on that.
I appreciate that, Keith. Thank you so much, and I thank you for the opportunity just to kind of go, well, here it is. There's a lot I can say, and so thank you for allowing me that opportunity. And I truly hope that your listeners and viewers will find benefit from this and maybe have some curiosity.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Roxanne. Have a great day.
You have a great day too, Keith. Take care now. Bye bye.